Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, July 23rd, 2026, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside will be quite sweltering today, with a high of 100.4 degrees and a low around 70.5 degrees, so please make sure to stay cool and hydrated if you are heading outside. In our top stories, we are taking a closer look at the significant new military funding legislation moving through the House and what exactly is inside that massive spending package. We will also examine the Department of Homeland Security's recent acquisition of 2 major detention facilities located in California. Beyond these deep dives, we have a variety of other stories and updates to get you caught up on everything happening in the world today. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning. Yesterday on Capitol Hill, the House pushed through a massive military funding bill and a lot more. Our congressional reporter Ethan is here to walk us through it. Ethan, good morning.
Good morning, Grace. It was a busy day on the Hill. On Wednesday, July 22nd, the House passed a $1.1 trillion military funding bill. It's called the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA, and the vote was razor-thin, 216 to 212.
So barely over the line. Was this a party line vote, or did both sides pitch in?
It was technically bipartisan, but just barely. 6 Democrats crossed over to join the Republican majority. Republicans are calling this bill a, quote, generational investment, end quote, aimed at readiness, lethality, and innovation. Their stated goal is building what they describe as a fighting force of the future.
$1 trillion is hard to picture. What does that money actually buy for the people serving?
There's a lot in there for service members directly. The bill provides a 5 to 7% pay raise for all troops. It also improves cost of living adjustments for people stationed in expensive areas and adds increased paid leave. On top of that, there's new fertility coverage and dental coverage for junior reserves.
That's a meaningful bump for military families. Is there anything in the bill that hits closer to home for American workers?
There is, and it's a big deal for shipbuilding. According to reports from Congressman Jared Golden's office, the bill protects American shipbuilding from offshoring. It does that by blocking funds for battle force ships built in foreign yards. And specifically, it allocates $1 billion for a second DDG-51 destroyer to be built at Bath Iron Works in Maine.
So it cleared the House. Does that mean it's headed for the president's desk soon?
Not so fast. The bill faces a difficult path in the Senate. Senate Democrats previously blocked their version of it, demanding concessions to curb President Trump's war effort in Iran. And because most legislation needs a 60-vote threshold, Republicans will need Democratic support to move it forward.
What are Democrats saying about the price tag?
The top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee is Representative Adam Smith of Washington. He criticized the bill for including $1.15 trillion in discretionary spending. His argument is that these needs shouldn't be met through tax cuts or massive reductions to domestic programs, so expect that to be a real flashpoint in the Senate.
Now, I understand the NDAA wasn't the only big vote. There was a separate budget blueprint?
That's right, and this one's worth understanding. House Republicans advanced a $95 billion budget blueprint, using something called the reconciliation process. Reconciliation is key here because it lets the package bypass the Senate's 60-vote filibuster threshold and pass on a simple party line vote. This blueprint passed 216 to 214, and it works as an instruction for committees to craft the actual legislation.
And where's that $95 billion supposed to go?
The biggest chunk is for the Iran war. The blueprint sets aside over $70 billion, and some instructions specifically cite $73 billion to fund the ongoing conflict. There's also $12 billion in assistance for farmers struggling under President Trump's tariffs, and $10 billion to implement the Save America Act, which includes proof of citizenship requirements for voting.
Let's stay on Iran for a moment. What do we know about the cost of that war right now?
The numbers are sobering. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth reported the war has already cost taxpayers $37.5 billion. He also noted that the Pentagon is running short of cash, and the human cost has risen, with 18 U.S. service members killed and nearly 500 injured. 4 of those deaths were reported in just the recent days.
That's a heavy toll. And I understand people are feeling it economically too.
They are. This escalation has coincided with real economic strain here at home. According to AAA, gas prices have climbed back above $4 a gallon. So for a lot of families, the war in Iran isn't just a headline overseas. It's showing up at the pump.
With costs like that, was there pushback on the blueprint?
Plenty, and interestingly from both sides. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries argued that Republicans are, quote, ripping food from the mouths of hungry children, end quote, to sustain what he called a war machine. But some GOP fiscal hardliners were frustrated too, because there were no offsetting spending cuts, so the criticism came from the left and the right.
Any notable voices in the middle?
Yes. Representative Kevin Keeley, who's now an independent after formerly being a Republican, made a pointed argument. He said war funding should be bipartisan, and he warned that the current proposal fails to provide a path toward ending the conflict. That's a critique aimed less at the dollars and more at the strategy behind them.
Let's turn to the practical side. Is the government at risk of shutting down anytime soon?
The House tried to head that off. It passed a separate bill to extend government funding through December, which would avoid a shutdown when current funds expire on September 30th. That's a little over 2 months from today. But the Senate picture is complicated.
Complicated how? What's the holdup over there?
Senate Majority Leader John Thune of South Dakota has been noncommittal about the House's budget resolution. Thune is prioritizing a continuing resolution for routine funding instead. And he suggested he may use the House's budget resolution as leverage in the fall if an agreement with Democrats can't be reached. So this could stretch out for months.
There was one more vote that caught my eye. Something about lawmakers and stocks.
Right. The House passed what's called the Stop Insider Trading Act, and this one had a wider margin, 232 to 198. The bill would ban lawmakers from acquiring new individual stocks while they're in office. But there's a catch. They could still retain existing stocks, reinvest dividends, and sell stocks with disclosure.
That sounds like a reform people have wanted for a while, so why the criticism?
Well, it was heavily criticized by nonpartisan good government groups and most Democrats. They point to major loopholes that still allow members to profit from existing holdings or other asset classes. So critics say it doesn't really close the door on the behavior it claims to target. It just narrows it.
And I understand there was another objection unrelated to the stocks themselves.
Yes, and this is where it gets tangled. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other Democrats denounced the bill as a, quote, trick, end quote, or a trap. That's because it included SAVE Act-style voter ID and proof of citizenship provisions. Critics argue those unrelated additions are really an attempt to sabotage national mail-in voting.
How many people could a proof of citizenship requirement actually affect?
The numbers experts cite are significant. Roughly 21.3 million eligible U.S. citizens do not have readily available proof of citizenship. That's about 9% of the voting age population. So opponents say a requirement like that could create real barriers for millions of legitimate voters, which is why they're so wary of seeing it bundled into other bills.
So to sum up, it was a huge day, but a lot of this still hinges on the Senate.
Exactly. The House moved fast on the NDAA, the budget blueprint, government funding, and the stock trading bill, but nearly all of it now runs into that 60-vote wall in the Senate, or into John Thune's strategy for the fall. So while yesterday looked decisive, the real fights are still ahead.
Terrific breakdown. Ethan, thanks so much for making sense of a very busy day.
Happy to, Grace. I'll keep tracking it as it moves to the Senate.
That's our congressional reporter, Ethan. We'll be right back after the break. Our next story looks at a major shift in how the federal government handles immigration detention. Chloe, welcome. What's happening here?
Thanks, Grace. As of today, the Department of Homeland Security has bought 2 of California's largest detention facilities outright. They purchased them from Core Civic, a private prison company. According to HSJC Newsroom, Newsday, and Bakersfield.com, the federal government paid a total of $1.5 billion. The sale was finalized on July 2nd, just about 3 weeks ago.
1.5 billion. Which two facilities are we talking about?
The first is the Otay Mesa Detention Center in San Diego County, which went for $739.2 million. The second is the California City Detention Center in Kern County at $732.6 million. Both are big pieces of the agency's West Coast network. And this is really the first time we've seen Washington move to own these facilities directly rather than contract them out.
So why buy them instead of just renting the space, as they usually do?
That's the heart of it. Federal officials and ICE spokesperson Jason Sweeney described this as a direct response to years of resistance from California. Sweeney said the facilities are essential, but that, quote, politicians championing the state sanctuary stance, end quote, have used state laws to either ban private prisons or financially cripple them. So by owning the buildings, the federal government sidesteps that pressure entirely.
Remind us how that fight with California started.
It goes back to 2019, when Governor Gavin Newsom signed legislation to phase out private, for-profit prisons and immigration detention centers by 2028. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals struck down that ban in 2022, but state lawmakers didn't stop there. They kept pressuring private operators through proposed steep taxes, so the pressure never really let up.
And direct federal ownership changes the legal picture how, exactly?
In a big way, according to the experts quoted in these reports. Former senior ICE official Claire Trickler-McNulty and immigration attorney R. Andrew Free noted that federal ownership shields the facilities from California's Health and Safety Inspection Authority, its zoning rules, and its environmental requirements. Free added that it removes financial risks for the deportation program. It also protects the companies from divestment pressure, like the 2019 divestment from CoreCivic and Geo Group by California's largest public pension funds.
Let's talk money. Was $1.5 billion a fair price for these properties?
That's where a lot of the scrutiny is landing. HSJC Newsroom reports a real gap between the purchase price and the assessed value of these properties. Otay Mesa sold for $739.2 million, despite a fiscal year assessed value of $164.9 million. That's roughly 4.5 times the value. California City went for $732.6 million, against an assessed value of $171.5 million, about 4.3 times.
Those are striking numbers. How does CoreCivic explain that?
CoreCivic's Vice President of Communications, Stephen Owen, defended the figures. He said the valuations followed a federally mandated appraisal process. He also pointed to Proposition 13, arguing it causes assessed values to diverge significantly from actual market values. So in his telling, the assessed value simply isn't a real measure of what the property is worth on the open market.
Is everyone buying that explanation?
Not by a long shot. San Diego County Supervisor Paloma Aguirre pointed to what she sees as a potential conflict of interest. She noted a $500,000 donation that CoreCivic made to President Trump's inaugural committee. And Anthony Martinez, a spokesperson for Governor Newsom, condemned the whole move. He called it a, quote, reckless and cruel use of taxpayer money, end quote.
You mentioned this as a shift in strategy. A shift away from what?
Away from something called the ICE Detention Facility Re-Engineering Initiative, launched back in early 2026. Analysis from Aaron Reichlin-Melnick of the American Immigration Council explains that Blueprint aimed to convert warehouses into massive complexes. We're talking places capable of holding 7,500 to 10,000 people each. It was an ambitious plan to expand capacity fast.
What happened to that warehouse plan?
According to Reichlin-Melnick, it largely stalled. He points to lawsuits, an unrealistic timeline, and a critical shortage of medical and correctional staff. So buying existing, ready-to-go facilities, what officials call turnkey facilities, is seen as the more pragmatic move. It lets them use money that's already set aside before it disappears.
Set aside from where? Is there a deadline on that funding?
There is. The money comes from a spending package that President Trump signed a year ago, so it's earmarked but time-limited. The urgency now is to spend those billions before they expire. That helps explain why they'd move quickly to buy proven facilities rather than wait years for warehouses to be converted.
Is there any upside for the people being detained in all this?
Some former DHS officials suggest there could be. They argue that direct federal ownership might actually improve detainee conditions compared to makeshift warehouses. But others are far more skeptical. Immigration attorney R. Andrew Free raised a darker possibility. He suggested these federalized facilities may eventually be used to detain American citizens who are not migrants.
That's a serious concern. Is California the only place we're seeing this expansion?
No, it's part of a much larger, though fluctuating, federal strategy. According to reports from Fox 2 Detroit, Fox 5 Atlanta, and Live Now Fox, DHS had previously purchased 11 warehouses. Those are spread across states including Texas, Arizona, Georgia, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Utah. So this buying spree has been happening in a lot of places at once.
You said fluctuating. Has anything slowed that down?
Yes. As of April 1st this year, DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen paused the purchase of new warehouses. He wanted to review contracts signed under his predecessor, Kristi Noem. So there's an internal reassessment going on. Even as some deals, like the California facilities, move forward, it's not a single, uniform push.
What about Arizona specifically? Anything developing there?
There is. In Arizona, ICE is seeking comprehensive detention services for a facility in Marana. According to House.gov, the agency has identified the Management and Training Corporation, or MTC, as the sole responsible source for that contract. So rather than open bidding, they're naming one company as uniquely qualified to handle it.
Let's come back to California. I understand there's another fight brewing near Gilroy.
That's right, the administration remains in conflict with California over a new ICE facility near Gilroy. California Attorney General Rob Bonta is challenging construction of the 26-acre site. It's leased by the U.S. General Services Administration from a company called ECG6 LLC for $26.5 million. So this is a separate battle from the two purchases, but part of the same broader tension.
What's the legal basis for Bonta's challenge?
Bonta argues the land has been zoned for agricultural use since 1967. He also says the federal government bypassed mandatory environmental reviews before moving ahead. Those are exactly the kinds of state and local rules that direct federal ownership can sidestep, which ties it back to our main story. For now, construction on the Gilroy site was paused in July 2026, so just this month, pending litigation.
So where does that leave the overall picture as of today?
We're seeing a real pivot in how the government approaches detention. The two California purchases show a preference for buying proven facilities outright, which removes state oversight and locks in capacity. At the same time, the warehouse strategy is under review, and legal fights like Gilroy are still unresolved. It's a fast-moving situation, and the tension between Washington and California doesn't look like it's easing anytime soon.
A lot of moving pieces and a lot of taxpayer money on the line. Chloe, thanks for breaking it all down for us.
My pleasure, Grace. We'll keep watching how these disputes play out in the courts.
Here are some other headlines. Starting with a heavy blow from the heavens, Tropical Storm Bertha has made a splash in St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana, landing about 40 miles east of New Orleans. The storm is now making a move toward Texas at 12 miles per hour, sitting roughly 110 miles southwest of New Orleans and 120 miles southeast of Lake Charles. With maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour, the storm has certainly blown through the region. A wind gust of 44 miles per hour was clocked at New Orleans Lakefront Airport, and a Waffle House sign even took a tumble onto a car in Panama City Beach, Florida, while a tropical storm warning stretched from Alabama to Louisiana, leading to the closure of parks, piers, and low-lying roads. Officials are staying positive. Governor Jeff Landry finds the forecast encouraging, and state climatologist Jay Grimes believes the damage will be manageable. Residents should still brace for 1 to 4 inches of rain and surges up to 3 feet. In a rare twist of weather, southern Louisiana found itself in a hot spot, facing both tropical storm and extreme heat warnings simultaneously for the first time since 2005. Bertha marks the second storm of the Atlantic season, following Arthur's lead from June. Turning to international health, things are looking grim in Congo, where the Ebola outbreak has surpassed 1,000 deaths as of July 23, 2026. This is the fastest fatal surge in the recorded history of the virus, leaving experts worried that the situation is entering a dangerous new phase. Across the ocean in the Netherlands, the food scene has been a bit too spicy for some. Data from 2025 reveals that nearly 2 million people were infected by food-related pathogens. There were 1,142 outbreaks that left 4,279 people feeling ill, including 12 large epidemics of at least 25 people. Out of 31 identified incidents, Salmonella was the biggest culprit with 10 cases, followed by norovirus with 7 and Campylobacter with 4. It seems the local cuisine left a bad taste in many mouths. Finally, we have a couple of updates from the legal and political beats. We are continuing to follow the developments regarding a $1.5 billion settlement and a ruling on fair use. Additionally, we are keeping an eye on reports involving the intimidation of the press and Governor Newsom's populist approach to taxes, where he is opposing a state billionaire tax while embracing a federal one. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini Pro 3.1, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.